Hey folks, welcome to Bear Mountain today. In the greenhouse, we are starting our vegetable season. So just thought I'd share with you what we're going to kind of do. The first things up for us are onions and shallots, because we start all ours by seed. We don't use sets. So this gives these guys the longest possible growing season. The best time to start your seeded onions, at least in our zone, we're talking the zone 8B, or even maybe a little earlier down in your zone 7s, and that is now in mid-January, because what we're going to be able to do is get these guys germinated up and give them a bit of time to grow on before they're actually put in the field. Onions, what we have found, we don't really need to do a lot of special handling with these guys. It's just a basic mix, a potting mix. We multi-seed in each of our cells. We use these 6-packs. So they're basically, when they're ready to go, we use our dibble stick, put it in the ground, and we can just pull this out. We don't use single seeding, so we'll multi-sow in a 6-pack. And that way, we don't get super huge onions, but we're gonna get onions that are maybe just smaller than a hard ball. But they'll work out pretty well, and we can get a lot of production in a very small space. So if I take one of these trays, I get 72 possible cells out of it. With 4 to 5 in a thing, I can get close to 288 to 300 onions out of it.
We had a lot when we did it this way last year. The interesting thing about it is it's January and we're running out of onions.
Yeah.
I guess we didn't do enough.
No, we didn't. And this year we're going to bump it up. So what we're going to do is we're going to do 2 trays of onions. We have 2 types this year. These are both storage type onions. The first one is called Bridger, and it's unfortunately it's a hybrid, so you can't really save the seed and get it true. But it's a yellow onion, but it's supposed to be a really good keeper. And then the other is Patterson. And that also too is a yellow onion. And the thing about onion seed is you want to get as fresh a seed as you can. So if you're saving your own, you want to use the seed from the prior year. And seed that gets older than a year really has a lot of a spotty germination to it.
Not so much. I mean, it's true. The onion allium family, the seeds aren't as viable the next year. Onions, kind of you can do that, and especially bunching onions, but shallots, no way. I learned that one the hard way. Old seed, and it was only 2nd year shallots. They didn't germinate. Right. So don't make that mistake.
Yeah, and we're planting shallots this year too. The main variety we're going after this year is called Ambition, and then we're going to trial another one called Matador.
Right.
So these are both fairly good size multi-bulbs in it. And
we did the Ambition last year when I finally got some more seed to do it again, and it worked out great.
Yeah, this year we got most of our seed either from Johnny's, or this one, Ambition, actually we got from Redemption Seed up in Washington.
Yeah, so we're excited.
Shout out to them. They do a good job, by the way.
We're excited about trialing that other variety just to see what it will do. But Ambition was our kind of a go-to. Right.
So what we're going to do is a tray of shallots. So we'll end up with we'll split the 2 varieties, and we'll end up with hopefully about 300 in that one. And then a tray of each variety of the yellow onions.
Right.
So that should give us, we're not doing any reds this year, are we? Don't think so.
No, because it was all, the onions were all about mostly making pickles.
Yeah.
And just eating.
Well, and doing the multi-sowing too, getting back to that, putting like 4 seeds in a cell gets you to a size that would be good enough for a slicer on a hamburger.
Right.
So.
And that's what we like them
for. It's not super huge. They're not going to be, like your Walla Wallas, you're going to get like this. But we're going to be, we're talking, put a nice slice on.
We just need more.
Yep. So what do we do for mix for filling these seed packs? We're using, in this case, a potting mix. It's already done up. Its base could either be coir or peat. And then what we do is we add to it our worm castings. So roughly this has got about it's about 20% of our own worm castings in here. So that gives it a nice rich. It's already got some perlite in the mix when we bought it. And frankly, I think it's enough for germination standpoint. And then as we grow on, what we'll be using is the Jadam liquid fertilizer to help kind of keep them squared away and growing on. We would anticipate putting them in the garden. Last year we put them in right around the first, I'd say right around spring. It's almost like between the 20th and the 1st of April, right around there. So pretty close to the end of March. So these guys will take 7 to 10 days to germinate. We'll put them on a heat mat at about 68, 70,
Somewhere in there, yeah.
with a humidity dome over it. We'll do that out here in the greenhouse. And they don't really need a super lot of light to germinate. They just need a little bit of warmth to get them going. As soon as they germinate, we'll pull them off that heat mat, take the humidity domes off, and let them grow on basically in the cool.
Right.
And that seems to, get them in a really good shape. And by the time we get ready for transplant, we'll do a video at transplant time, but we're talking about they're up to maybe whip size, and they got one good leaf. They're cotyledon, if you want to call it, leaf, and probably another one coming out after it. So they're thinner than a straw, but they seem to do pretty well. And by using the 6-pack, we're not disturbing the roots. So
Right.
we're just going to drop that whole thing right into the dibble hole, and that works out pretty good. So where did I learn all this? Check out Charles Dowding. I got to give a plug for it because he's the one who kind of turned me on the idea of multi-sowing in a block. That really works out pretty good.
No wasted soil.
No. So just going to give you an idea, filling it. The packs is really pretty fast. I just kind of fill them up and then just use, you can use, I'm doing one at a time, but some people will go through and, fill up an entire tray and then use another tray on top of it to kind of dibble and pack it down. You want to make sure you're not leaving oversized material in your cell or that there's an airspace. But you also, at the same time, you don't want to pack this down to the point where it's compacted and the water can't get through. So there has to be enough airflow, but at the same time, not big gaps. And we'll get all these guys filled up, and then we'll show you what we're going to do to plant. Okay, we got all the trays filled. We wetted them down to make certain that they're wet all the way through. So you just kind of check the bottom for slats. You see the kind of some moisture down at the bottom. So we know it got in there pretty good. And then you can use anything. I just used the handle of this little spatula just to kind of make a slight indentation on the top of the thing. We could only get this seed pelletized. Normally we wouldn't bother with pelletized seed, but unfortunately from where we were getting it, so it is quite visible. So we'll definitely know how many we're getting into a thing. And I'm going to try to put 4 into each one. This handy dandy little seed thing, many people have probably seen it. Sometimes I can get it to work pretty good. Sometimes it's just more of a pain. Like clearly I'm not using the right size. Let's go to a larger hole. Yeah, there we go. Oh, we're looking better. There's 3 in that one. So I want to make sure that they're in there. I got at least 4 in each one. If it goes to 5, I'm not going to worry about it. Now these things are pelleted. See, that one's got 5, so that's okay. These guys are pelleted pretty thick. Onion seeds aren't really that big of a seed. So it's just a matter of trying to get them all in. And I mean, in a perfect world, ooh, yeah, I got way too many in that one. Well, we'll have to fix that. I guess that's the nice thing about seeing a pelletized seed.
They say though the pelleted seeds don't last as long in storage. So another case of trying to buy the quantity you need and using them.
Yeah. So anyway, we're going to go through and do each one of these guys. Okay, so we've put in a minimum of 4 into each cell. There might be 1 or 2 that have 5. So basically we're somewhere around 290 potential onion seedlings in here, assuming they all came up and got to size. Now, one of the things about, we talked about multi-sowing is onions grow towards the top. So what they're going to do is they're going to push away from each other. So even though the plug is in the soil, as the onions grow and bulb up, the bulbing is going to be more towards the surface, maybe a little bit underneath the surface. And like I said, they're going to push against each other, so they'll push outwards, and that's why they're able to gain the size they can gain. So I'm going to be using just a vermiculite cover on this, just kind of make it easy. Usually you put about maybe a 1/4 inch of some soil or something over it to hold the moisture in while these things germinate. But in this case, the potting soil is underneath, and I'm just kind of like using my hand here to kind of fill the divot in. And once we have this completely covered, the last thing I do is put a label on it and water these guys one more time, making sure that the top and the vermiculite has moisture in it, and the seedlings themselves, the seeds, are going to have moisture in it. We'll use a humidity dome over the top for the first few days till we start to see some germination. If it looks like it's getting too humid in there, I might vent it, but usually this time of year that's not a problem. And like I said, we're going to put it on the heat mat at about 68 to 70, but even if you had a heat mat that you couldn't adjust the temperature to, but it stayed at a constant 70, 72, that'd be fine too. You just don't want to get too hot, and you want to be warm enough that the onions think it's time to germinate. So that's the key, is getting them germinated. And once they germinate, you got a fair amount of germination in your tray, take it off the heat and grow them on cool. Usually that means the ambient in the greenhouse. If your ambient in the greenhouse is 65 or something like that, that's fine. It's perfect. And we'll grow these guys on until, like I said, till near the end of March. And when the conditions are right, we'll get them in the ground.
So this is our first week 2 veggie.
Right. We program all our starting, whether it's vegetable or flowers, on the basis of the calendar week. It's just easier to do it that way than say, oh, it's a specific day. It's always done on January 15th or something like that. Just saying week 2 kind of gives you a general idea. You got the 7-day period of time, the window to kind of hit it. In our the way we do things, it's just easier to keep track of it that way. We will, on the card, just for information purposes, we'll put the name on it and the date we sowed it. So that way, when we'll also kind of keep track of that. We have a computerized list using AppSheet. We've got a little planting log, and that we can keep track of all the stuff we plant. Now, you don't have to use a computer to do it. You can just use a notebook. But as long as you kind of keep track of, when you sowed it and how well it worked out for you, whether you need to move it a little later or a little earlier, depending on, your situation, that's always good to keep records, so that when you go into the next year, you can kind of say, yeah, it worked out pretty well. Or, gosh, maybe if I had a couple more weeks of growing time, before I stuck them in the ground, it would have been better because maybe they were a little too weak. That sort of thing. But the key to getting, I think, good bulbing onions is you want to get these guys up, and you want to get them growing, and you want to get them planted right about, in our case, being north of the Mason-Dixon line. We want to get them in the ground, as soon as that ground is warm enough for these things to grow, and they're going to grow into the long day. And then once they kind of get near the long day, that's when they're going to start bulbing up. So the more you can develop that root system in the plant during that vegetative period, growing into the long day, meaning from the spring into the summer equinox, you're going to get a bigger bulb, a bigger plant. So it's the size of the root system that will help. If you plant these guys too late in the northern hemisphere, northern part of the United States and Canada, these varieties are suited to do well north of that, what they call the Mason-Dixon line, which is kind of like, probably around the 35th parallel, somewhere in that neighborhood, because we get much longer days in the summer by almost a half hour, 45 minutes between where we are in the Pacific Northwest and say where somebody is in Los Angeles or San Diego. We will actually get more dusk period of time than people further south to us, and so some people don't recognize that, but the onions definitely do. And so it's always a key too. So if you're growing in the southern part of the United States, be sure to look up what you need to do for you and when you need to plant. This is really kind of a recipe for people like us we're at the almost the 45th parallel. So this kind of works well for us up here. Any other thoughts?
No.
Nope.
I think that it's just a matter of getting everything that we have slated for week 2.
Yep. So we'll just wet these guys down, get the label on it, and move on to the next one. Right. So I guess at this point, we just want to say thanks for watching today. And as always, stay safe out there in these crazy times. And we'll catch you on the next video. Bye-bye.
Bye.